What is up? Just gotta check, make sure we're live for sure. Bro. Okay, we look like we're good. We are good. We are good. And we are good. Pretty sure we're good on the other platform. And even if we aren't, I don't really care. So, getting straight into the bed. Lessons I've learned for the past few days. Or, I don't know, lessons I've learned in the past indefinite amount of time, if that even is a word that makes sense. One of the biggest things and the inspiration for this video was the main lesson, really. And it had to do with how nowadays I've noticed, compared to the past version of myself, I'm much more better at explaining concepts or ideas or where I'm coming from, my perspective, in a lot less words. And so it's brought me to the conclusion that when you feel like you have to explain yourself in so many words, especially if you feel like you have to over explain yourself, that like certain situations, I will say this as a kind of I don't know what you would call it, preface, I guess you could say. Certain situations, it might be the other person's fault. You know, maybe they're just, it's something in their energy, you know, maybe they're not so able to grasp or see where your perspective is coming from, right? But if you experience it on a large scale, like with many, many different people, of you struggling and feeling like you have to over explain yourself, or feeling like you're explaining yourself but you're not ever really able to get your point across, that I've come to the conclusion that that is more of a sign of how you are needing to work on things. Specifically, you may be unhealed, you may not be as aware or as self-aware, you know, but it's many different aspects that goes into it. You know, I can't just say that it's only because you might be unhealed or it's only because you might be unaware. It's more just as a broad sense, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, because when it comes to, especially if you're really tuning into your own true state of being, if you're into your own energy and you're just experiencing and being as is, you're able to receive a lot more, because you're not clouding your judgment with so many thoughts and feelings. You're not cloudy and foggy in your mind, right? So then when you actually do go through each experience, you're able to extract a lot more details from something that a lot of people might not be able to extract as many things from that experience. And then when you do actually come to the conclusion where you're able to actually explain the things that you say, you might need to say it in a lot less words. And the reason I say this is because even if you look at my old videos on YouTube, I'm always going to no, I won't say always. Got to plug those old videos, you know. If you look at my old videos on YouTube, especially when I first started, you can see I struggled back then with just trying to explain quite simple concepts that me personally now, I would find simple to be able to explain them in a video. But back then I found them difficult to explain. And then I felt back then that I needed to put many different words into a sentence, and then even then it still might not 100% be as clear as versus now. I'm only doing a comparison from me, the old version to now, you know what I mean? I'm not I'm not really thinking about much else. Like there are other factors like other people, you know, but generally I'm just comparing my old version of myself to my now version of myself, and how back then I'd need a lot more words, a lot more time, and a lot more effort to explain some things now that I'd find a lot more simple. And it's not just due to the fact that I'm more adept at it because I've gone through that experience more times. It's now getting to the point where even certain concepts that I'm more new at discovering or something, and I'm still able to explain them on a quite a deep level compared to the old version of myself with as little words as possible. And I'm able to get my point across to people in my life with as little words as possible. And I don't find myself having to over explain, to overreach, to over use any words in my sentences in order to get my point across. My point is just received. And that's like it's like an energetic thing as well that I'm kind of trying to point at. It's like an energetic thing where like what's understood doesn't need to be said. That's basically probably one of the best ways I could put it into words. It's like what's understood does not need to be said. And if it needs to be said, then it's like not necessarily 100% going to be understood all the time. And obviously there's discrepancies, there's different parts of life that this might not apply to. Sometimes, you know, it just might be the other person. They might just be not an understanding person, you know what I mean? So barring all that, and if you watched a few of my videos already, you should already know that I'm not really talking about those specific situations, whether it's this topic or not. I'm always just talking about specifically what I'm talking about, you know what I mean? So if there's any like exclusions, you automatically should be able to watch my videos and be like, okay, he doesn't mean that, you know what I mean, without me actually having to say it. But for people who might be new, you know, I like to put that in there just so we can get a good grasp of what I'm actually trying to portray. And then people don't get lost and think, oh, well, you know, I've been through this situation and it was actually just the other person. It wasn't me struggling to actually explain myself. But anyways, back to the topic. So yeah, that's one of the big lessons that I've learned, because I've found myself being able to explain and put into detail things without actually even a lot of the times going into detail. It's quite crazy. And obviously it's a learning process, and it's a process that I'm getting better at each day, of course, you know. So for me especially, I'm more used to explaining myself in many different words, especially because I got a lot of air and earth in my chart. I'm very communication and thoughts based a lot of the time. My moon is a fire, but you know, in terms of my overall chart, I've got a heavy air and earth placement. So very communication, very practical, very thoughts, you know, very such mood. You know, what is that meme that people used to be obsessed with a while ago? That very good such boy. I don't know. You get the idea. Why do I sound depressed or sad? Honestly, I'm not even. I think I'm just a little bit like tired because I've been out all day, so a little bit just on that relaxed state of being, you know. I'm just feeling a lot like, you know, you get the idea. So yeah, obviously, you know, someone like me being so thoughts and communication based, still a process. It's a work in process. It's a work in progress. It's a work in process, mate. Words. It's a work in progress for me to actually get to this point that I'm at this point in time. But I'm noticing each day I'm finding myself having to explain myself in less and less words, and I'm bringing my like sentences down and being able to kind of shorten my explanations to people, and then still get the same point across. If not, I'm able to get the point across in a much clearer way. And it's kind of crazy because I feel like a lot of people might have the misconception that you would need to explain yourself in more words in order for you to get someone to understand. But again, it goes back to that whole energy thing. What's understood does not need to be said. The elephant in the room type shit, you know, funny as, because when I was thinking about this whole situation as well, and I was coming to this conclusion myself today, it was actually this, like, I was wearing this elephant bag, and I remember like thinking like, oh yeah, the elephant in the room, you know, like when you're able to just figure out like something that's really obvious, or you're just able to kind of, everyone's just knows what it is. And I'm like, oh wow. So I guess, you know, it goes into that, and you carry those energies around with you, especially if you program your stuff. Like I program everything that I do. So like colors, you know, materials, anything that I can find a meaning and attach and know a meaning for, I program it with whatever meaning I want it to be. So like feathers, you know, feathers, we like to be light, you know, we like to fly free. So those are all the kind of stuff that I like to put into my shit, because otherwise, you know, it could be just any energy riding that frequency, because we've got all energies around us we're experiencing all the time. So when I programmed that bag and I said the elephant in the room, being able to reveal and know things, I started to see myself experience that not only, but also be aware of that and have my own realization and my own moment of an elephant in the room, an elephant in my room, you know, which was, bish, I don't need to say it, just spray it, you know. No, don't spray it, but I don't need to say it, I just need to convey it like an image, obviously through words, because, you know, we use words to communicate. It's very, very normalized in our society, but I'm just noticing myself going more deeper into that space of just kind of more painting a picture and an image, rather than communicating a sentence, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, you know, cool, but like I think it will. I definitely think it will, especially with how my life has been going and how my stuff has been going with me explaining stuff, and you like I've been just telling you, you know, I don't need to say anymore. So yeah, that's one of the big lessons that I've been learning for the past few days, where I'm just like, whoa, that's like really some real profound type shit that I've been coming to the realization of. And definitely, like, it's not like I haven't heard that before. I've heard like Dollar to Parliament on YouTube, shout out to him, freaking always talks about it, about how, you know, we can get to a certain point where we won't necessarily need words to communicate, and if anything, that's the more natural state of being that all of us should be in. Because if you think about it, you can communicate in certain ways to an animal like a cat or a dog without actually utilizing your words. And if you know anything about training an animal, you also know that a lot of the time they actually don't even listen to the word you're saying, but they listen to the tone. And that's more closer to kind of what I'm talking about. It's more of like a energy, it's more like a force, it's more like a image rather than a word per se. So you're able to, even body language with an animal, you know, if you have a certain body language, or if you have a certain look in your face, especially with cats, they're really good at reading like facial expressions. Same with dogs too, but I don't really know much about dogs. But you know, he talks about like just getting more into that natural space, because, you know, even animals are more tapped into that natural space of just being able to read body language, being able to read expression and all of that kind of stuff without you having to say a word. They know, you know. It's like, if you look at an animal and you've got a threatening stance, you could just like, you know, you could just give that, boom, like instantly the animal already feels uneasy around you, all types of shit. So it's like that kind of stuff. And Dollar talks all about that. So that's why I wanted to, you know, just give credit where credit's due, because it's not like I came up with this concept like on a whim, you know what I mean? It's not like I just like, ooh, I thought real hard and I was just like, yeah, I know this. It was actually a process, hearing it from someone and then also going through the experience myself. And that's all. If anything, you see me posting videos and I'm talking about something, it's because I went through that experience myself. I might have heard it, I might have, you know, might have seen it somewhere, but in order for me to even talk about it in my videos, I would have had to go through the experience myself. Otherwise, I probably won't be talking about it on my YouTube video. At least majority of the time, I don't even like to go down that train of thought of, let me talk about something that I haven't experienced. I just don't like, this is not something that I'm really interested in, unless you specifically hear me say, I haven't actually experienced this, or, you know, haven't actually gone through or learned this enough. Like, that's a different story. But yeah, the words. What else have I learned? You know, like there's freaking, sometimes I find myself as well struggling to go through, because there's just a lot that I have kind of learned that it gets to the point where I'm like, okay, which one do I choose? You know, because especially someone like me, not only do I have a Sagittarius moon, but beyond that, I'm just like that kind of person. Like, I'm real lesson oriented. So like, even when I wasn't in school, I remember this is like one thing that I used to do. I used to always say, like, I found myself when I was in high school, why did I do air quotes? Don't know. When I was in high school, I found myself during the holidays actually learning a lot more in the holidays than I would feel like I learned in school. And like back at that time, I didn't really think or consider myself to be a learning type of individual. But now as I grow older, I'm like, no, that's definitely the kind of person I am. I'm more of that kind of person where I'd like to take the lessons out of everything. Even if it's something insignificant that a lot of people would just be like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. Oh, don't worry about it. Oh, it's just life. For me, I'm like, and yeah, it might be just life, but let me find the meaning and the reasoning. Let me find the lesson. Let me find something that I can gain of substance out of this. Otherwise, like, to me, it's not really much of a life. Like, at least from my perspective, it's just the way that I process things, I guess. And I'm sure a lot of people who are watching me can relate, you know, especially if you're watching my videos for a while, you're probably into that exact same kind of stuff. Very similar minded, you know, you like to learn, you like to extract lessons from each experience. I know a lot of people in my personal life are like that too, you know, especially people I associate with on a regular basis. They're just more in tune with that. Okay, like, what can we actually take out of this lesson, rather than, okay, it just happened, you know. Like, I'm not that kind of person, mind or mentality wise. So yeah, that's why I was going with that, saying how sometimes it's difficult for me to find the actual specific lesson that I want to talk about in life. Because it's like, okay, well, where do I start? You know what I mean? Like, where the heck do I start? Like, it's a bit overwhelming. Not overwhelming, but, you know, it just gets a bit like, okay, let me just take a moment, you know? And of course that's normal. I feel like, especially for someone like me, I take a while to process things. And if you haven't noticed, I mean, sometimes on my videos I can be quite fast, but if you see me in my private life, I do tend to take a bit to process things. And that's why as well I talk about experiences. I have to process it in experience wise. And I think that's natural as humans, for you to actually talk about like wisdom versus knowledge. Knowledge is knowing something. Wisdom is actually being able to go through that experience and apply that knowledge, you know? So I'm finding myself more in that wisdom state of being lately, where I'm more in that state of like, let me apply this knowledge rather than just to know something, and just to know, oh yes, like 1 + 1 = 2, or blah blah blah, 1 + 1 = window, you know, like they say in school. Sometimes I look at myself, I'm like, the way you talk, man, it's like an old man in a 25-year-old's body. Just some of the things, the concepts I say, and the way that I talk, and the way that I carry myself, I'm like, yeah, it's acting like an old man in a 25-year-old body. It's like, okay, I'll go off. go off. And that's one thing, you know, that's another lesson that I've noticed. Like, I don't think, and it's more, not so much a lesson, more as a realization, where I don't think that I've ever met anyone. First of all, I don't think I've ever met anyone in my life who's ever acted their age. And I get a lot of people say that to me. They're like, you don't act your age. But personally, I don't think I've ever met anyone who I feel like that genuinely acts their age. I feel like everybody acts like an age that they're not. So like you might meet someone who's 22, they might act like they're 19, they might act like they're 30. Then you might meet someone that's like 50, they might act like they're 30. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know anyone who actually acts their age. So I'm starting to get to that conclusion. I'm like, age is really not even like a actual real tangible thing that like people try to put to, because I'm like, never experienced, at least from my knowledge, you know, from my memory, don't think I've ever experienced someone who's actually truly acts their age. It's always either younger or older. Majority of the time I feel like people act younger than their age. I feel like no matter what age that I've met people in, that I always see like, this might come across as rude, but I don't really care. Like, I always see like a little kid, you know what I mean? So, and that also ties back into my whole thing where I look at myself, I'm like, you're like a fucking old man. But it might just be my own brain, it might just be my own perspective, you know, I might be not on the right track, you know, I could be wrong. I'm always open to being wrong, but I highly doubt it. What's it called? When it comes to, yeah, just the stuff that I've experienced, the people that I've seen, and then looking at myself, I'm just like, I rarely meet someone that actually acts their age or older. Like, actually, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I have met quite a few people that act older. But do you know what's funny? One thing that I've noticed is the people who I feel like that act older are usually from specific generations. They're usually from a specific generation. It's usually my generation. I don't want to toot my own horn, you know what I mean? But like, but then I've heard so many people, what's crazy to me is I've heard so many people tell me, oh, everybody that's your age is this, everybody that's your age is that. And I'm just like, the only people that I've met my age are like usually like me. They usually like ahead of their time. They think more broad-minded. They're not so close-minded like how they kind of tell me that they've met people that are my age. So it's real interesting, but that also ties into the whole, you know, everything's a mirror, everything's a reflection of your state of being. And that also like it's real interesting. I was talking about that with my friend today that I was out with, and she was telling me about how she'd been struggling with some issues, some frustration issues, and just dealing with certain situations in a more better way, not so reactionary, right? And then we'd both been in the train, we'd both experienced very similar circumstances, but on two different sides of the spectrum. My experience with me being on the train was that I noticed everyone that sat next to me, and I was just paying attention to this. I was like, it's funny, everyone that sat next to me in some way, shape or form, I was able to relate myself to them in like, so one girl that sat next to me, she had a real kind of like out there style, like different style. Not like completely out there, just different, you know. She stood out, like you would see her, you would kind of see like, okay, she dresses a little bit different than others, you know. And I feel like I'm similar, you know, especially with the freaking feathers in the hair. I just see, you know, like I'm like, okay, she must have looked at me and she must have had that kind of thing, like, okay, you dress a little bit different, I dress a little bit different, but people probably don't think like this deep into shit, you know. But I think you just naturally gravitate towards whatever energy and whatever people that you feel like resonates to you, you know. And then also like the other person who sat next to me in the train was this girl who I can't say for sure, but she seemed gay, you know. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, it must be the vibe I give off, because I definitely do. You know, if I saw myself in public at a first glance, I'll be like, yeah, you're probably gay. You're probably a gay guy, you know. Maybe, you know, it depends as well. I feel like when you're gay, you kind of know. You get the vibe. You just catch it. It's like a wave. I've always noticed that too, like with other people that I've met that are straight, you know, they sometimes will look at me, they'll be like, how can you just tell? If you're gay, you just know, you just look and you're like, yeah, you just got the certain mannerisms and you just got the certain things that you do like that. It's just like obvious. And even be able to tell like the difference between someone who acts like they're gay but isn't, and someone who acts like they're gay and is, and someone who doesn't act like they're gay and is. But those ones are a little bit more tricky, you know, they're a little bit more ambiguous. Like, yeah, I've seen this one person, this is so random as fuck, but who gives a shit. There's one person in this car, like I looked over, it looked like, seemed like the straightest person ever, you know, and then the next minute he's like going like this, like, call me. And I was like, I remember being confused, like, what the fuck? You look like you have a wife or some shit like that. Like, you just look like a man. You know what I mean? Like just a straight up man, like straight as nail. And I was like, what the fuck is going on? Are you trying to joke? Are you trying to prank me? Like, that's what I was thinking in my head. Anyways, enough of that. I don't really like to go too deep into the whole gay shit. You know, no disrespect to anyone who's gay. I just don't really like to talk too much about that, because I don't feel like it's my whole personality or my whole life. You know what I mean? I definitely don't feel like it's much worth talking about something that's a very small aspect of who I am as an individual. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, as well, like I noticed myself just like finding a lot of synchronicities and confirmations like lately too, where I'm noticing, okay, like my influence and my reach, like this kind of ties back into my old video, this kind of part of the lesson, my old video. Oh, I might need to search it up. It's this video where I was talking about how when you kind of are allowing yourself to not get affected or be so heavy about certain experiences in your life, but still kind of being open to changing them, I'm pretty sure, something along those lines, and then you actually seeing that change without you actually having to lift much of a finger or do much, because you didn't allow yourself to get reactionary and to overthink about it. And like I noticed that like a couple months ago for myself, just noticing certain things that I used to struggle with, and then me still battling with that frustration but not outwardly reacting in the same way that I used to, and then noticing how the situation would transform and just me not being reactionary and all that kind of stuff. And I would be like real interested, real intrigued, like, okay, this is completely different to how I've experienced this before. Now the situation is changing in my favor, and it's the only difference that I could put it to was me not being as reactionary and me just being more light and kind of more free and just letting go of the experience. Like, it was really cool. So I experienced that on a little bit more of a deeper level, where I'm starting to notice myself not even have to do certain things. It's almost like, it might seem a bit crazy to some, but it's almost like I'm wanting people to do certain things, and then just before I'm about to say it, they do it. And it's like, it might not even be anything that frustrates me. It's just like they're able to read my mind or some shit, or like my mind is able to influence them, but without, it's not like I'm sitting there trying to influence people, you know what I mean? And this is what I feel like is just a representation of how kind of strong and powerful my mind is becoming, due to just how strong I'm able to maintain my state of being and stay true to myself. Like, just small things where I'm like, okay, this is not that big of a deal for me, but I'll be thinking, I really want this person to do this. I really want this, can this person move? Like, this person's kind of in my way. And then I'll be like, okay, it's time. Just say it. You know, if you're really that frustrated about something, just open your mouth, open your waha, and spit it out. And then I'll go to open my mouth. Just before I can even open my lips, then this person will turn around and move out of the way. Like they heard my thought. It's like crazy as fuck. But that's just a small example. It's just really interesting to see stuff like that happen and notice the difference. So it ties into that video that I was talking about a while ago, which I still haven't found because I was just focused on talking about it. So I'm pretty sure it was lessons in law 3, your environment. I'm pretty sure it was that video. Wait, what? Sorry, hold on guys, I just got a little bit distracted there. Damn, that is crazy. So I just found out that Lessons on Law 3 wasn't actually uploaded because it failed to upload to YouTube, and then I was meant to re-upload it from Twitch, but now it's deleted from Twitch, I'm pretty sure, so can't even re-upload. But that's all good, that's all good. Shit happens. Maybe it might still be on Twitch, but if it isn't, you know, I'll make do with whatever I got. But yeah, those are pretty much the lessons that I've been going through for the past few days. It's definitely coming to that realization of how influential the mind is when you're actually able to hone and build on your mind in a way that's beneficial and in a way that actually helps you and helps your situations, where you're not having to overdo things, you're not having to over stress yourself because you've put like that effort and that work in your mind and your mentality. So when your mentality is strong, your body doesn't have to be so strong to have to do things that maybe before you felt like you had to put so much strain and stress on your body, like over explain, like, you know, argue, like force your opinion onto others. This has been a big lesson and just a kind of reminder for me the past few days, especially because this is what I used to struggle with. Check out my video. Pretty sure it was called Why It's Not Good, or Stop Convincing Others, something along those lines. It's got a big red thumbnail and it's about convincing others and like proving your point, basically. Back then when I used to struggle with that, nowadays kind of revisiting that lesson but from a different perspective and more being on the outside looking in, where I'm able to actually kind of be a guide to someone else and talk about my own experiences to someone else, where they're able to kind of take the little nuggets of wisdom that I've gone through and learn from that too, where now I don't feel like I even have to worry about over explaining, because even if I was to explain my point and nobody was to get it, I'm content because I know my truth, you know what I mean? And that's that strength that I'm talking about as well. It's like knowing your truth, having certainty and having sureness about where you're at, about who you are, about your own triggers, about your own shadow, about everything to do with you. And when you have that knowing and you have that truth, nobody can tell you otherwise. And regardless of if you're wrong or if you're right in other people's eyes, they'll still be able to relate and they'll be able to see it from your perspective, because you don't have that cloudiness of doubt, knowing. You're not switching, you know what I mean? You're just able to fixate on your own way of doing things, which is, you know, definitely a beneficial energy for me, being a fixed sign. because fixed signs are meant to fixate on their own way of doing something. Everyone could benefit from that fixated energy, of course, but as a fixed sign, it's definitely a big thing. But whereas if you're a cardinal sign, or if you're a mutable sign, you know, you would be more focused on cardinal, initiating something rather than fixating on something. So that's why people say cardinal signs are leaders. If you're Capricorn, Aries, Aquarius, I'm pretty sure. And no, a Capricorn, an Aries, a Libra, and what's the other one? Cancer. Capricorn, Aries, Libra, and Cancer. So those ones, you know, you guys are more fixated on, or you guys are more situated in that energy of initiating and being kind of like a trailblazer in a way. But that's also where it kind of, you know, can get a little bit tricky for some, because you might find yourself in between and you're like, oh, well, I find myself more naturally attuning to the fixated energy. I find myself more naturally attuning to the mutable energy. And it's probably due to the fact that you have a lot of fixated or mutable placements in your chart. But again, you know, astrology is not the end all be all. It's more just a guide and a template to show and explain things in more detail, so you can get a deeper understanding or overstanding about yourself and others, and how you can relate, and so on and so forth. But you know, just giving that kind of concept and that idea from my own perspective, being a fixed sign or fixed dominant, and then also having mutable and cardinal in my chart, I'm able to find myself fixating more and noticing benefits from that, because I'm more sure, I'm more fixated, and then I'm noticing other people respecting my fixed energy, you know. And I guess that's probably because I'm more in my own energy, you know, naturally. And that's not just because I know that I'm a Taurus. It's due to lessons and experiences that I've gone through that have shown me when I'm not fixating on my own way of doing things, I notice more negative circumstances and things playing out not as good. When I am fixating on my own way of doing things, I'm noticing more positive circumstances and things actually going more in the right direction, you know, which is kind of subjective in certain times. But yeah, either or, just take what you need and leave what you don't. I hope maybe this could help someone, but if not, this is just a cool little video for me to sit there and chit chat, talk about some of the lessons that I've gone through, some of the things that I've come to the realization of the past few days, and just kind of like really hitting home that I've gone a long way, is all I can say, and I'm proud of myself for sure, because I've gone from a very negative space, and then coming to where I'm at today has taken a lot of work, a lot of mental work, and even a lot of physical work. But you know, I've gotten there in the end, and just being that reminder to myself, like, yes, you do know this, and you have gone through these experiences, and it's cool. It's really cool. Life is beautiful. Life is really awesome when you allow it to be. You know, if you don't, then it's going to be a bit of a struggle. But yeah, anyways, I feel like I'm dragging it on a little bit. So I hope you guys have a beautiful time, day, night, wherever you are. And I will see you guys for the next video. Peace. Oh my gosh, I forgot how to